Oggi intervistiamo Cicogna Giunco.
Today, we are here to interview Cicogna Giunco. She's an expert in Selfica, and so together we will try to discover something more about this interesting discipline. So here we are in the Salet laboratory, and I'm joined by Cicogna Giunco. So Cicogna, as per usual, maybe you can start off by introducing yourself and you can tell us something about yourself. I'm Cicogna Giunco Zaffiro, and I discovered Damanhur in November of 1982 in the center of Grosseto, which is where I'm from. And then eventually I decided to move in January of 1985, and I just moved here in this land that back in the day was pretty much just a swamp and many things did not exist yet, which means that I also had the honor of building most of what you find today in Damanhur, of what today exists. So I did a lot, and I, for example, was part of the Way of the Monks, and then starting from 1991, that's when I really just dedicated myself to the discipline of Selfica. And this is because the founder, so Falco, actually encouraged me and suggested for me to try and explore this discipline. And so for all these years, I've had the pleasure of researching, exploring, and working together with these intelligences, because at the end of the day, I think the connection with these structures is such an emotional and strong and intense connection. So maybe you can help us understand exactly what Selfica is and what the self are, because I know that for some people this is the first time they're even discovering this discipline or just hearing these terms. So what is the Selfica, and how did you first find it or explored it? We could define it as a science and technology that was brought to us by our founder, so by Falco Tarassaco. He shared it with us, and then all the Damanhurians really researched it and experimented with it. So the simplest example I use is like saying that there is some electricity, and it's just like electricity. We don't see it, but we can measure it. And we can also, let's say, see it, but depending on the different bodies that we build, we just can use it for different reasons, and it has different functions. The same thing with electricity. A hairdryer uses the same type of electricity that a electric razor uses, but of course they have very different functions. So in this case, this is a type of energy that's a vital energy, the vital energy of the planet. And in this case, this discipline, by using this clean energy, this vital and pure energy, through the different shapes that we create by creating the bodies, then thanks to all of this, we have different functions. We have functions for the person, functions for the environment, and many other different types. So if you had to maybe find an origin to these cells, so the question is, where do they come from? What is their origin? Where is their home? What would you say? I would say that this is a knowledge and a type of science that actually we find some traces of it in ancient Egypt. And so we can also suppose that it dates back to Atlantis, and there's traces and artifacts and even examples of this type of technology. So today I might say that the self find their mother in what is the temples of humankind that we have here in Damanhur. Let me ask you something. So historically speaking, so basically in our path in Damanhur, when was the moment in which you made this first discovery, or when did Falco first started to talk about it? So how did it all start? It started definitely with our founder and with all the founders of Damanhur. So he, in this case, first started to talk about what we call the personal self. So they are very small objects typically, and they're made with some different circuits and layers, and they're helpers specifically designed or created for a person. So they basically select the best and most synchronic events that are useful for that person. Now, synchronic doesn't necessarily mean beautiful, because synchronic just means a way to understand lots of useful things for my own personal path of growth. So this is how it first started. Back in the day, in the very first years of Damanhur, I wasn't even in Damanhur when this all happened. So I can just tell you what basically I've been told. So these were the first self that were created. And then eventually, other types with other functions were created and other designs were made, and some were made, for example, to reinforce the energetic aura, and others for the environment, and many other functions for healing purposes. So today, we just have so many different types of self. And also, Junko, let me just ask maybe a more provocative question, but it's also because we often hear this question. So the self are alien creatures. So this term alien, how would you explain it? Would you even use it? So it's a bit of a combination of different things. So I use the example of the fact that today, for example, today, quantum physics is able to explain what selves are. And in all of this, we believe that these bodies, these devices can actually host intelligent entities. Alien, why not? We are definitely not the only one that live in this whole universe. So that means that they could also come from other universes or other layers or dimensions of this map. Of course, yes. And what I can say is that from my experience, they're all beneficial, meaning that this energy, like I said before, it's a pure energy. So if there is something that's not quite right, then it just doesn't work. So this is also for how the selves are created, right? So how is a self created? How do you design it? And then what is the connection between those that created and the creature? So what do you feel? So the connection is also a connection that's just very purely based on math, because it's based on the number 3 and all the other sequences of number 3. So everything has to follow a very specific type of sequence. Same thing for example, the use of alchemical liquids. They are influenced by different types of things. For example, solar influences, lunar ones, seasonal ones, and so everything is based on this type of math and logic, so it has to be extremely precise. I design many different selves, my selves, and what I can tell you is that when you are angry, or maybe when you're a bit annoyed, when there's something that's not quite going well with you, you just cannot make a self.